Hello guys, welcome to the CSS crash course. In this video, we will learn about CSS Flexbox. My name is Kafui and welcome to my channel mods.dev. Please subscribe, like and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever I release a content on the channel. With that said, let's get started. CSS Flexbox is a powerful layout module in CSS that allows you to design flexible and responsive layouts more easily. It is designed for creating more efficient layouts in a single direction, either as a row or as a column. So in my index.html file here, I have this outer div with the class of flex container, and then I have nested these 5 divs with the class of flex item, and then flex item 1 through to flex item 5, and then the contents are 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And then in my style.css file, I just selected them. I selected the flex container div, which is the outer div, and then I apply some border around it so that we can see it. So this is the border around it. Let me just enlarge this some more for you to see. So this div with the class of flex container is the one with the border around it, and this is what we work with as our flex container. And then I selected the flex items 1, 2, 3 through to 5, and then I apply different background color to them. So now let's go ahead and look at how we can create a flex container in CSS and look at some CSS flex container properties. So in CSS, in order to create a flex container or to make an element a flex container, you have to set the display property to flex. So I'll go ahead and select my div with the class of flex container and set the display property, and then set the value to flex. Upon doing that and save, now our div is now what? A flex container, because we have set the display property on it to what? Flex. Now, upon doing that, our elements now move from left to right. So initially, let me just comment this out. When I do that and save, you see that our elements or our divs are the display property on the div is what? Block. So they move from top to bottom. So when I go ahead and then set it to flex, now they move from left to right. So that is because by default, the flex direction property of a flex container is what? Row. So the first property or flex container property we'll look at is the flex direction property. So I'll go ahead and write it out, flex direction. So the flex direction property sets or specifies the direction of the flex container. So we can set the value to row, which is the default value. So when I set the value to row, we don't see any different. When I change the value to row, reverse, when I do that and save, you see that our flex items, so the divs which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these divs are now called what? Flex items. So our flex items move from what? The right to left in what? In a horizontal direction. So another value is we can set on the flex direction property is column. When I do that and save, now it is back to moving from top to what? Bottom in a vertical direction. And then the last value we can set is what? Column, reverse. And I do that and save, now our flex items moves from what? Bottom to top. So these are some of the flex direction property that we can set. The next property we'll look at is the justify content property. The justify content property specifies how to align flex items along the main axis of the flex container. So whenever we are working with Flexbox, the main axis depends on the flex direction. So first of all, let me just write justify content. So when the flex direction is from left to right, which is in a row, the main axis is also from what? Left to right. So the values that we can set on the justify content property are, we can say space between, let me write that properly, space between, and you see some of VS Code gives us auto completion, so I'll choose space between. When I do that and save, so you see that there is what? Space that is being created between our flex items. So it will distribute the available space in the flex container among each what? Children. Another value we can set is center. When I do that and save, now our flex items are now centered in the flex container. Another value is flex start, which is, I think, is the default value. Yes, so flex start is the default value. another value is flex n. When I do that and save, our items move to what? The far right of each flex container. And then another value we can specify is space around. When I do that and save, we see that the space in the flex container is distributed around the flex items. And then we can specify a value called space evenly. When I do that and save, the space in the flex container is distributed evenly among the flex items. So these are some of the values we can set to the justify content property. The next property we'll look at is the align items property. The align items property specifies how to align flex items along the cross axis of our flex container. So let me just go ahead and write it. So align items. So when our flex direction is row, which is from left to right, the main axis is from left to right. And if our flex direction is column, the main axis is from top to bottom. And likewise, when our flex direction is row, our cross axis is from top to bottom. And when our flex direction is column, our cross axis is from left to right. So since our flex direction is row by default, our cross axis is from top to bottom or vertically. So some values we can set to the align items property are center. When I do that and save, now our flex items are centered vertically in the flex container. We can specify a value of flex start. When I do that and save, our flex items are moved toward the top of each flex container vertically. We can specify flex end and it goes to the bottom. And so these are some of the values that we can specify to, or we can set to the align items property. I think the default value is stretch. When I do that and save, our items are stretched vertically from top to bottom. The next property we'll look at is the align content property. So let me just comment this one out and save. So align content. So the align content property specify how to align multiple lines of flex items along the cross axis of the flex container. So some values that we can specify, as you can see, VS Code is giving us auto completion. We have the baseline, the center, flex end, space around, space between, stretch. So I'll just say center and then save, and we don't see anything because our content is just small in the flex container. Now the next property we'll look at is called the gap property. The gap property sets a gap between flex items based on the flex direction. So I'll just comment this out and save. So I can specify the gap. So I'll just say 20 pixels. When I do that and save, we see that it creates a space between our flex items with which are 20 pixels. So I can increase it to, let's say, 60 pixels, and we see that space created among our flex items. So when I change, or when I set the flex direction to column, let me just change this to column quickly. When I do that and save, now the gap is being created among our flex items vertically, or from top to bottom. And you see the flex direction is column, so our flex items move from top to bottom, and then that space is being created between them, which is 60 pixels. And when I comment this out, it goes back to row. Now one thing I want us to see is how to visualize Flexbox in our browser DevTools. So just go to your web page and then right click and then click on inspect to go to the DevTools. So this is my DevTools. Now let me zoom in for you. So when I zoom in for you, you can see this flex indication here to our flex container. When you click on it, you see a visual representation of the Flexbox in your web browser. So I don't know if you can see this properly. I'm zoomed in way higher, but I doubt if you can see this properly. So when you set the display property on an element to flex, you see this flex indication attached to it in your browser DevTools, and so that we can see the indication here. And when you come here, when you come to this right panel here, you'll be able to have access to the flex property. So when I click on this icon here, so you see these flex properties for a flex container here, and over here we can click on these icons to update our flex properties in the web page over here. So as I click on these icons, you can see that we see this visualization in our web page here. So I can change the align content property here, justify content property here. So you can play with this in your dev tools to see how Flexbox works. So that's what I want to show you over here. So that's all for this video. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section for discussion. Please subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever I release a content on the channel. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.